Chapter 1.1 Line Shape and Principle of Contrast, Part 2 is our second video. So we're going to go over actual and implied lines again for just a moment. With our actual lines, they're generally continuous, if that makes sense. Not always. This is a smudgy sort of a shape, really, more than it is a line, but it still constitutes a line. It can be thick or thin, like notice how these get thicker and denser as we go down. The difference between actual and implied is that implied is generally a broken, sort of a dotted line. That is a lot of times the case. But it is also the case that these could be standing people, figures, and the tops of their heads would create a line, okay? Or the tops of these numbers, or the, even through the numbers, we're creating a line, the tops of the telephone poles. When we look at this artwork, the Pentateuch with prophetical readings, we believe on our initial look that we are looking at multitudes of lines. All of the borders around this piece look like they're made out of drawn lines. When we look closer, however, you see that there are words, there's text going around here, there's instructions for pronunciation. This is called micrography, and it is part of the teaching with a Hebrew text, so it shows you how to pronounce different words. But you notice that there's spaces in between each one of these words, and that's part of what we call implied line. And then also we have a broken line going down the middle between the two lines of text. That is also an implied line. You could even argue that the text going across in a horizontal would also be an implied line. But there's nothing really much touching here. There's a few items in the wings and the scales on the throat that are actual line, but everything else is an implied line. Another case of implied line is the Sour Kids, The Devil Made Me Do It. So this is more of a graphic arts image, and what we're looking at are some interesting shapes. We see like some of these faces in here, and we have some actual lines. If you look at the eye here, that's an actual line. But we have a lot of this broken line as well. So that's an implied line, that's an actual line. There's a mixture. Where it really gets dramatic in terms of implied line are the letters. These are broken, so you can read the right here, and devil is sort of underneath the figures here, and so on. But that broken sort of rectangular shapes, these sections, that is creating an implied line. Also, this graph or grid that we're seeing here with these dots, they look like horizontal and vertical lines, but they are in fact a row of dots. So that hopefully is going to give you a definition. We looked at more actual line in previous artworks, and we'll look at that as well, but moving forward, but the focus here is this implied line. So we're going to get into directional line, and this is really important, and I do ask for this in the writing. So we're going to focus a little bit about how artists use line in a work of art to get our attention. In this particular piece, the connectors, we get an immediate sense of almost vertigo of just, they're up high and it's spooky. But the reason that we get it, and this is the whole thing that I want you to really think about and learn to explain, is you don't want to just say that I can tell they're up high, because that's not telling us how the elements and principles got you to imagine that this is up high, if that makes sense. Where is this sense coming from? Well, in our description from our book, and this is, I'm going to sort of repeat what they're saying, this line is going down this really strong, and it is a diagonal, but it's also somewhat vertical. But you can see how the width of these girders, these I-beams up here, are thicker, and they start to get a little thinner. Then we notice that they're disappearing. They're going down into the outside of the frame, actually, and they're receding and going down, giving us a sense that they're very high up. And the reason we know that is that closer things are larger, right? Further things are skinnier. So that's what's giving us that sort of spooky, eerie feeling. Also, we can see the buildings in the background, and they're done kind of faintly. Now, we don't know about our atmospheric perspective yet in terms of our book, but that is an indicator of it, where things are fuzzier or fainter in the background and darker and more detailed in the foreground. But that gives us a sense of distance, and we can also see that we are above the height of some of these buildings. So they're working on the Empire State Building, 1934, and that is one of the tallest buildings in the world at that time. So we want that sense of these workers working up high and how dangerous and how awestruck that we're going to feel. So this line is a strong um, vertical going straight down, and it's taking our eye with it because it's narrowing at the bottom. If you measured from here, that would be wider than you would here. Same is true for this beam here. When we get into diagonal line, that's another directional line, and comic books use this quite a bit to show us action. And we have a lot of diagonals happening here. The most prominent one, or the one that catches our eye, is this particular diagonal, which is some sort of an explosion of light coming off of this central area here. We also have a diagonal with his sword and the bent elbows. That's giving us a sense of, things are moving. The body is not standing upright, and he's at a diagonal here in this way. That's giving us some clues that there's action, there's this explosion happening. So we really want to look at things that are moving at an angle, showing us movement naturally. And I'm going to show you a diagram in a moment. But diagonals will grab our attention and our focus. So Frida Kahlo also is using line to communicate and to grab our attention. And I'm going to skip ahead here for this panel just to give you a little bit more clear language. So the vein that's going to interconnect between the two figures, we'll go back and look at it in a moment. That is connecting the two Fridas in this particular piece. This was the cover of our book for the second edition. We're in the third edition now. But at any rate, it's a very famous piece, and what it is it's sort of showing her European and Spanish and Native Mexican identities. So there's two Fridas, there's two selves. There's the European Frida and there's the Native Frida, and her red line is her connecting line here between these two parts of herself, and we're connecting into her heart here in both cases. But here her heart is open or broken, and we're indicating that she has just divorced Diego Rivera, who is down in this little tiny painting or image down here. And then she's got this other sort of bloodline coming here. Our eyes follow this and this clamp, and that is referring to her multiple surgeries that she had over her lifetime because she was in an accident when she was 18. So the line here is really grabbing our attention, and it's curving and wrapping around the figure. So that is grabbing our attention. It's flowing and grabbing, and of course, blood is red, and red against white is a contrasting focal point, very dark against light coloration, and then blood or red will also grab our attention. So vertical lines are about strength and energy, and I'm going to refer to the body in all cases here. So when we're standing and we're just calm and we're talking to someone, then you get a sense of calmness or strength, or just, that they're not going to move. Horizontal, if you think of the body, what are we doing when we're horizontal? We're sleeping. So that's a sense of calmness and passivity. That is where it comes from. Diagonal lines are associated with action, motion, and change. What's happening when we're at a diagonal? We're moving, we're running. So these are really hardwired into our psyche, because when we think about hunting, if we were in a hunting gathering sort of mode, and our primal part of our brain we need to react to things very quickly, and we don't before we have a verbal conversation with someone, we want to know how threatening they are to us, a person or an animal. So if we see a sleeping animal or a sleeping person that we don't know, then we realize we're going to be we're not worried about it, right? So if it's running from us or running to us in a diagonal situation, then we're more frightened, or we have to pay attention to it and see what's going to happen. With a vertical, then it's standing still, so it's communicating strength and calm. It's not afraid of us. We're not afraid of it. We're going to look at a little bit different references. There's a person reference here, but you can see this diagonal. And this really will come up in some of the writing, so make sure you're clear on what makes up a diagonal line. Why is it communicating movement? Because it's linked to humans running, okay? Horizontal lines, they communicate calm because it is humans lying down, and then vertical lines communicate strength, stability, and authority. Think about somebody at a podium giving a speech. They're standing up straight. They're giving you some information, and they're strong. It's also linked architecturally. Buildings give us that sense, with those columns from the Greek and Roman era. Okay. Also, an ocean, I guess, could be a sense of calm. It doesn't have a bunch of waves on it. That's giving us a sense of relaxation or calm. The Nike logo here, I'm going to end here. This is obviously a diagonal, but there are other things that are at play here. But this gives us a sense of movement, but it's not a scary negative movement. It doesn't look explosive, but it looks like something is swooshing past us. It kind of reminds me a bit of a jet trail, or something moving in the sky like a bird. So this is from 1971, but this company is trying to express that they're connected to movement, to running. The running shoe in 71 was huge, a big important thing, and they were competing with other brands, and they really wanted to show that in a very simple way that they were connected to such movement. Okay. The other thing that's happening here is high contrast. We have white, white, and black, black, and we'll get more into contrast in a moment.